Live from parts unknown, you're listening to Simon Miller's Pro Wrestling Podcast, the only wrestling podcast on the planet, we think. Sit back, relax, prepare for positivity to run through your veins as Simon Miller gives you your weekly dose of powerful pro wrestling audio. It is Miller Time.
Hello and welcome to Simon Miller's Pro Wrestling Podcast. My name is Simon Miller, and this is a pro wrestling podcast. Right, we're about to break the time continuum, whatever I think that's called now, because time-space continuum. The time sphere was in my head for some reason. Anyway, basically, I am recording this on a Friday around about 1 p.m. in the afternoon. And later on, we're going to get to the Wednesday episode that I haven't done yet because life this week went crazy. Now, I'm going to explain what happened on that episode, but just in case anything comes up on this episode that you'll be hearing on Saturday, and that I also talk about later, that is why. I've explained it now. Again, makes no sense because obviously it doesn't matter. I'm just letting you know what the deal is. The point is I wanted to make sure I got the 2 episodes done. A little bit, kind of all over the place this week, but that is what life is all about. Things get thrown at you, you deal with them, and you go on to whatever is next. But yes, if you had never listened to this before, it is a pro wrestling podcast with me, Simon Miller. And in our second episode of the week, even though this week it's absolutely the first, we always get a member of my Patreon community on. That's just patreon.com/Simon Miller 316. That helps support all my personal jobs such as this. I wouldn't be able to do these podcasts or any of the videos I do on my YouTube channel, which is just the Miller Report Rules if you want to check out that. Without them, and I'm very happy to say that joining me today to talk about wrestling for a little while is my man Toby. Toby, how are you doing today?
I'm very well, thank you. How are you?
I'm good, thanks, dude. Like I say, it's been a long, crazy week. There's been a lot going on in wrestling, obviously, which I always like to, keep my ear to. But otherwise, man, yeah, I'm all good. Now, again, I'm sure you've listened to the podcast before. I'm sure you know the 411. But I always enjoy learning how people got into pro wrestling to begin with. So if you can just give me a bit of flavor why you started watching pro wrestling, why you still watch it now. The best will always be the time I had this conversation with someone. They told me they actually hated pro wrestling. That was the best. But yeah, you let me know. How did you get into it, man? Where did it start?
Well, I'm disappointed to let you know I love professional wrestling.
Nah, that doesn't disappoint me, man. That's what I'm all about. I'm all about that positivity.
Yeah, I've been a fan for well over 20 years now. So I first became aware of it back in the 80s when World of Sport was on, when Big Daddy was fighting giant haystacks. And I didn't really get into it then. I didn't really like it that much. But I got into it more a little bit later when WWF, as it was known then, became quite prominent on Sky. I didn't have Sky myself, but I had some friends who did. And I think the first show I ever saw was the first full show I saw was called Battle Royal at the Albert Hall.
I remember that.
Yeah, it was really enjoyed it. It was the one that British Bulldog won.
Indeed.
But it's from that moment on, it just absolutely fascinated me. And although I've had, like most of your listeners and people you've had on, there have been times where I've been less into it than others. I've been pretty much into wrestling ever since then.
Who was the first person you saw that made you go, wow, who's that guy? Mine was always Bret Hart, which I always find hilarious because it was just a dude in spandex. That's all it took for me. Dude in red and black, pink and black spandex. And I was like, oh, I want to watch this. Who was your guy?
Oh, Bret was a great guy. But I think for me, I really like the British Bulldog. Maybe because of that first show that I saw, that he won it. And also, of course, he was British. And, at the time, for me, that was important. But and he had an amazing look as well. He was huge, buff, ripped, and massively strong as far as I could tell. So he was probably the first one I was into. But then I didn't really get to watch that much WWF. We got more WCW over here. We
did, right? Yeah.
2 a.m. in the morning or something ridiculous. But I really got into. Do you remember Vader? He was probably my favourite heel of all time.
Well, as in Big Van Vader, the guy with the mask?
Yeah, he was incredibly intimidating, scary. He had a great moveset, but the way he used to just beat the hell out of his opponents was mad. No one else was quite like him. And I think he was probably my first real favourite wrestler.
That's amazing. And was that from watching WCW and stuff like that?
Worldwide, yeah.
I was going to say it had to be. Yeah, because that was always the weird thing with Vader was again, I don't really understand how I did this given that I lived in the UK as well. I guess it just must be an age thing and what's accessible to you. But yeah, I wasn't really exposed to Vader until he had his WWF run in, 96 or wherever it was. Yeah. And obviously that was really watered down. So it wasn't until my later years when the internet opened up and accessibility to wrestling that wasn't as accessible as it was elsewhere became easier, that I actually realized, oh man, not only because in WWF, quite literally, he was portrayed as an overweight guy. Like that's actually what he came out and said in a promo. I'm just a big fat piece of shit, or whatever he said. One of the worst moments in wrestling history. Even more so when, like you say, you learn more about his career and just how good he was at being a heel and being a bad guy, and how much he kicked the crap out of people. And it was just like, what on earth happened here? And the only sort of end result I could come to is it must be a classic Vince McMahon situation, or reportedly so. If he doesn't make you and you're a character from outside the promotion, you're always going to struggle a little bit.
I think you've nailed it. He was absolutely watered down when he came to WWF, and it was a real disappointment for me. I think he headlined one event, which was SummerSlam 95, and even that was a disappointment. I think the best thing he did was the Royal Rumble 96, which was the SummerSlam 96 was the one I was talking about, wasn't it? But the Royal Rumble was his first entrance. He made an impact then, and so it was all promising, all exciting when he came in. And I was still quite young, of course. But then very, very shortly after that, he went downhill big time. And I think you're right. I think Vince had a lot to do with that.
There was rumours as well that apparently Shawn Michaels didn't want to work with him. Apparently he was a little bit too snug for Shawn Michaels' liking. I think that apparently killed his push as well. I swear there's rumours out there, and I'm just spitballing here, so I could be absolutely wrong. But I swear there's stuff out there as well where people said that he was even in line for actually win the WWF title. But again, Shawn Michaels like, no way, man. I'm nixing that right. I'm not having Vader punch me in the face, which I kind of understand. But at the same time, working snug, as they say, is just it's just part of the wrestling business. I mean, that's just what some people do. But no, it is nuts. You're right. And he kind of fell off a cliff. And then eventually, obviously, he just left WWE and he went back out to Japan and wherever else that he went.
And I think he did quite successfully when he went back to Japan. I think he probably made the right move, professionally speaking. Unfortunately for me, that meant I didn't really get to see him very much after that. But yeah, he was the first guy that I really got behind. And I loved his program with Sting and Ron Simmons as well in WCW. I thought they all worked really, really well together.
Oh, yeah. I mean, everything he did. I liked his Mick Foley stuff as well, which obviously, after I read Mick Foley's book, I went to watch the Cactus Jack matches. And it is just, wow. I mean, no wonder, both of them had ailments after their wrestling careers were done because, I mean, yeah, they were vicious, absolutely vicious matches. What did you think? Because obviously when Vader passed away, was it last year? I think it must have been last year. It was a really weird one because, I mean, obviously it always sucks, especially, I mean, it sucks anyway, but when it's someone you have an attachment to, even if it is a fan attachment, it's still like, oh my gosh. But I still think, it kind of ties into the fact he's not in the Hall of Fame either. I still kind of think, I don't want to say he was done an injustice by anybody, but I felt, given his contributions to the business, and I hate saying business, I hate that word, I'm going to take it back, industry, and given the fact that you can argue that he was probably the best big man ever. I mean, he's in the conversation, right? You have to put him in the conversation. He kind of passed away, which is sad, but it didn't really seem to be, and maybe that was on WWE's behalf or whatever, but again, it just kind of, it kind of came to, it just came and went. And I felt like given that it was Vader passing away, it should have been a bigger deal.
Yeah, I think there should have been a bit more fanfare. I mean, I don't know if that's the right word to use.
I know what you mean. It's a hard word to come up with, isn't it?
Yeah, there should have been more of celebration of his achievements. But, it is what it is. And he didn't make that much of a mark in WWF. So I guess it's kind of understandable in the context of the conversation. But you're right. It is slightly disappointing that that's what happened, given his immense achievements outside of WWF.
What do you think he goes into the Hall of Fame next year? Do you think? Oh, this year I just say good grief. I mean, do you think he's because usually what WWE does is they put one posthumous person in to the Hall of Fame. Who was last year? Who died last year? I can't remember. But do you think he'll be the celebrity the rest that goes in this year that kind of has now passed away but will still get a shout? Well,
if we take into account the fact that Mean Gene sadly passed away. I think he would probably take that position if there was only one slot allocated to that.
I think he's in. I think Mean Gene is in. I don't know. I don't know.
I mean, I wouldn't. He would be my first choice if he hadn't already been in the Hall of Fame. But yeah, I take that on board. So yeah, Vader, absolutely. I don't see any reason for him to not be in the Hall of Fame, to be honest, unless there's some machinations going on that I'm completely unaware of. I see no reason for him to not go in. I think he'd be a great choice.
Yeah, no, I agree. I absolutely agree. And I think his son is a wrestler now, at least doing some things in wrestling, so he could easily induct him. I like that, though. That's why I always like to ask that question. You always get a random name coming up, because so many people assume it's going to be Hulk Hogan, Ultimate Warrior, I mean, Bret Hart, Shawn Michaels. These are kind of the names you expect. But I enjoy it when, and we had Fit Finlay came up, and somebody absolutely loved Brock Lesnar. And now Vader, like, these are the characters, and these are the wrestlers that kind of sit beneath the surface when you're talking about your super mega dudes, but obviously made vast contributions to this thing that we love. I like it. I like it when those names come up, though. Especially we haven't talked about Vader, if at all. So obviously you move out of that kind of period, and we enter into Attitude Era and beyond. Do you remain a fan throughout of all that? Like, do you like it as much as everybody else? Because I know some people that stopped watching just before the Attitude Era, and they kind of come back for the rise of John Cena.
I mean, that would have been, I think, a bit of a shame if that had happened to me. Fortunately, it didn't. I stopped watching, I think, around about 94, I think, when everything got a bit cartoonish for me.
Yeah, it did, yeah.
My liking. And I came back around the time of the rise of Stone Cold.
All right, so the perfect time then.
Yeah, so shortly after WrestleMania 13, round about the time he battled Bret Hart in that classic match. And then from then on, I was absolutely absorbed with it. Loved the Attitude Era, and then from there, I became more interested in other things that were going on outside of WWF as well and WCW. And obviously, the Monday Night Wars was a very exciting time. But then you had the rise of ECW as well. And when I found ECW, I thought I couldn't believe what I was seeing. It was so exciting. It was so different. I mean, it looked, pretty crappy in comparison, production-wise. But in terms of the in-ring work, it was amazing. And the very first ECW show I saw was Annika Rules 1999. And it was head and shoulders above anything I'd seen WWF or WCW do, with maybe a couple of exceptions. But and then from there, it's I've been interested in indie wrestling outside of WWF and WWE, and to the point where I probably enjoy those outside promotions a little bit more now than WWE now. I
want to talk about ECW in a second, actually, because I think that's quite an interesting conversation there. What other stuff do you watch at the moment? Is that New Japan, Ring of Honor, that kind of stuff?
Yeah, absolutely. So I really enjoy. I've loved the first 3 series of Lucha Underground. I think they're absolutely fantastic. New Japan, I'm just getting into. Wrestle Kingdom 13 it might be my favourite show of all time, actually. It was
really? Why is that, man?
Incredible. Every match on it was astounding. I think the first one was probably the weakest, the Gauntlet tag team match, but every match after that was 5-star, I'd say, and it was the most consistent card I've seen for a very long time.
How long have you been watching New Japan? I'm just intrigued because it kind of. I'm not saying there are better shows in the past. I think you have an absolutely good shout to make that, but I always find it interesting about when people started getting into New Japan.
Well, I signed up to NJPW World for Wrestle Kingdom 13, so I haven't watched an awful lot before that. I saw last Wrestle Kingdom, which was also incredibly good. But other than that, I haven't seen very, very many shows.
What made you get it then? What was it last year? I mean, my gut would be that it's Jericho, but I don't know that for sure. Is it just but it may just be the buzz, right? I mean, the last 2 years within wrestling, there just has been a buzz about New Japan. And once again, the accessibility of the internet and everything has just made it so much easier to watch. Yeah,
it's the buzz. And it's something I've been sort of meaning to take the plunge on for a while, subscribing to that service. I think the reason I hadn't before is probably more due to time than anything else. But it's just mainly the buzz. It's not I like Jericho, but he's definitely not the draw for me. Although, interestingly, I think from what I've seen in NJPW, his work in that is far better than anything I've ever seen him do in WWE.
I think so, and I think it kind of comes down. I mean, we may as well have a chat about that as well. I do want to get back to ECW, but obviously, if you have been reading everything that Jericho's been saying this week on his podcast, he has made out, and I don't see why he'd have any reason to lie about it or exaggerate, that the deal that he's got with AEW is the best deal he's ever received in his career. And he was negotiating with WWE as well, but Vince McMahon didn't want to match it. So I guess to him that makes sense. I'm going to earn more money, plus I can be part of something that, you know, could potentially boom, and because of me, I can help do that. So I can kind of understand on paper, you know, why he's headed in that direction. But I do think his perception within WWE was almost not at the level. I'm not saying it's a Cody Rhodes situation, because obviously I know he's won world titles and he's main evented WrestleManias, but I still think he was always treated as maybe like an upper mid-carder as opposed to a proper main eventer. And now that he has gone to New Japan, had these matches with Naito and Omega, now, you know, kind of being the legendary figure that sits within AEW to get people's eyes on the product, I do think this kind of reinvention and everything that he's done has made him a bigger deal, which is strange because he made himself a bigger deal outside of the biggest company, which is kind of backwards.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you drew a parallel to Cody there, but absolutely the same kind of situation. I think Chris Jericho did kind of hit a glass ceiling there. He did fantastically well in WWE. He got all the championships. He's had incredible matches with a lot of people, and he's a fantastic worker. But I think there was only so far he was able to go there, and by growing outside of that, as you say, he's become something much more, and I'm really excited about him moving to AEW now. Can't wait to see what he's going to do next.
Yeah, and absolutely. I really do think that everything AEW's done so far, I know people go, oh, you're getting too hyped up about it. Yeah, I am, but that's much more exciting than not doing that. So, yeah, I think all their moves have been great. And the fact that Chris Jericho is still going to be able to work New Japan, I think makes New Japan more interesting, especially because they're expanding at the moment. But I also kind of like what WWE's doing at the moment. I thought Raw and SmackDown this week were far better shows. Weirdly, I actually preferred Raw to SmackDown this week, which never usually happens. So all in all, yeah, I think we are living in... I don't agree with some people's statements that, you know, this is the biggest time, the biggest boom ever for pro wrestling. I mean, it's really not. You know, the Attitude Era and sort of the Hogan at his peak era just had much more. I know there is social awareness thanks to Twitter and Facebook and so on, but just general awareness I think was far higher back there, even if they are making more money now. I mean, if you look at it from finances, I guess you could debate that. Right, so let me just do exactly what I said we shouldn't do. Let's go back before we go forward. But ECW is an interesting one, especially because here in the UK, am I going to guess, if my memory serves me right, that you would have watched it on Bravo? No,
actually, I actually watched them on the videos, the VHS.
Right, where did you get them from? Because I always wanted to watch ECW when I was a kid, but I just couldn't find it. And then one day I stumbled across it on Bravo, but Bravo would air it at like 10:30. I was really young at this point, and my parents, you know, I wasn't allowed to stay up for it. And, you know, the way they were cut and the way they were produced did make it look crap compared to WWE. I mean, we all know that one of WWE's upsides are their production services. But yeah, ECW it didn't have the same, because I didn't know. I wasn't educated enough, and I always kind of kicked myself in the side for that, because I'm like, if you only you'd given it some time, you would have learned about it. So did you just know about ECW and then you hunted out the tapes, or did someone give you the heads up?
Well, what happened is I learned about it through, I don't know if you remember a magazine called Power Slam.
Oh, I loved Power Slam, man. I absolutely loved it.
It was fantastic, wasn't it? So I learned about ECW through there, and that made me interested enough to seek out, you know, what some of the shows, and we were the selection that was available to us was very, very limited. I think they came out in dribs and drabs, like individual releases. But I think the first time I saw them in the shops, there may have been 2 or 3 to choose from maximum. So we weren't really getting a great deal presented to us. But I, you know, picked up one of those tapes, watched it, and it was amazing. Loved it.
What was the first event you saw? I think you just said this, but
yeah, it was Annika Rules 19.
It was Annika Rules. So what do you think as well, though? Because it's a weird thing. Like I was mainly WWE and WCW then. But again, when I go back and watch it years later, you do go, oh, right, WWE literally did borrow all their ideas. Kind of. Like, you have to have the superstars and the talent to pull it off. You can't just, you can never just take somebody else's ideas and make it work. That's not a formula that, it just doesn't work. It doesn't. You need other attributes as well. But obviously it was heavily influenced by that, which is probably why Vince McMahon was so happy to work with Paul Heyman. Why have that as competition when, you're kind of being influenced them by so much. But when you first do watch it and clearly, take quite an affinity for it, do you start seeing those parallels then, or are you not looking for that?
That's an interesting question. I think you definitely saw embryonic states of certain things. I mean, some things were completely ripped off, without even attempting to dress it up. But yeah, you saw the early stages, early ideas, and then it was clear that WCW and WWF both took those ideas, ran with them in their own directions, some to more success than others.
Yeah, I think so. Did you prefer it? Because obviously ECW, it's hard to watch. It was hard to understand the impact it had in 2019 because we have seen so much, right? We've seen people being thrown off. I mean, you could go into YouTube right now and type in, man gets hit with fluorescent light tube, and that's that. It's not a surprise. But back in kind of, say, 1998, maybe 1997, whenever, the stuff they were doing was different. You didn't see that on your, sort of standard average wrestling show every day. So do you think it appealed to you? And I was saying because of the violence, but when you're young and stuff, that kind of stuff is like, whoa, what's going on? Do you think it appealed to you because of that? Or did you think, because obviously beneath all that was a very smart booker in Paul Heyman, who was also bringing in people like Eddie Guerrero, Rey Mysterio, and obviously Stone Cold Steve Austin to do some promos for a while. Like, what was the kind of thing that turned you onto it at first? Because, like I say, when I first tried to watch it without context, I couldn't get into it. I mean, I was about 10 or whatever, but still, I couldn't. There was a barrier there.
Yeah, so for me, it was never the so-called extreme elements. I was never really a huge fan of violence for violence's sake. What I found intriguing about it is that Paul Heyman had a knack of bringing out the best in his talent and hiding the things that they weren't so good at. And I think that is probably, if I had to go out on a limb, I'd say that was the reason for ECW feeling as fresh and as good as it was. So for me, it was the in-ring action that was the primary reason for me enjoying it. I mean, the fact that I wasn't able to watch it on a regular basis, I wasn't able to watch it week to week, but I was still enjoying individual shows is testament to the fact that the in-ring action was so good, because I was able to follow the WWF storylines week to week. I was watching Raw and Smackdown every week at the time. So the fact that I was still enjoying ECW whilst not being able to follow it on a regular basis, I think was quite indicative that they had something really good going on.
Well, I mean, it certainly did, man, right? Because look at the legacy that it's left. I mean, Paul Heyman was on Raw sort of the week before. No, this week. He was on Raw this week. I understand that he's a great performer, but it was absolutely the legacy that he made in ECW and obviously all the stuff he did behind the scenes with WWE that, has brought him to the dance. And you could even argue, there's an argument to be had. You can also debate it too that we wouldn't have had that big boom if it wasn't for ECW. I know they were always third in the race, and I know they kind of burned out long before we kind of hoped they would do. But I absolutely, I think it would be remiss to not include them to a certain extent.
Absolutely, I agree.
Yeah, well, there we go. Now, man, it's a long time ago. So, I mean, as a super long-term ECW fan, then, what on earth do you think when WWE resurrected it in the 2000s or whatever it was?
Well, I absolutely loved the One Night Stand show that they had in 2005. I thought that was, it wasn't perfect. It was part of the problem was that they weren't able to attract all of the talent that had been famous within ECW. But within the constraints that they had, I thought it was a fantastic show, very strong card, and it was, the feeling was there. The same buzz was there. It felt like a true ECW show. And again, for the following year, I think less so, but there was still that same feeling. I enjoyed that, not as much, but I did enjoy it. And I really enjoyed watching RVD beat John Cena for the title. But when they then introduced the brand, ECW, Which, yeah, I mean, that was a disappointment. That they didn't. That feeling was completely gone by then, and I don't know really the reason for that. There were probably a multitude of reasons for it, but it was something very, very different. It didn't have the same feel, and it was just a disappointment.
Well, I think that's the nail on the head, right? It didn't have the same feel because it wasn't being run by the same people. Like, Paul Heyman was involved, but it was a Vince McMahon project because everything in WWE is. And while a lot of people criticize that, I sometimes find it too hard. I can't overly criticize it because obviously Vince McMahon hasn't hit a home run every time, but he has hit home runs. So if I'm running my own company and I've got faith in my own abilities, it doesn't come across as someone that delegates, is my point. So if you are going to, revive ECW, it would seem madness that he would ever fully 100% listen to somebody else.
Yeah.
So I think that's always going to be the main reason something like ECW can't work. I mean, ECW was a passion project. Paul Heyman used to fill those vignettes in his mum's basement or whatever the hell it was. Yeah. So, they've all of a sudden been given money and a production thing, but then you still want to capture this indie, under-the-radar vibe that's kind of going up against these corporate companies. That's what ECW was. And then when they switched it over to the Sci-Fi Channel and you had mummies and zombies and Frankensteins and who knows what else coming out.
Yeah,
I think the problem was, I mean, it was bad anyway, but I think it wouldn't have been as bad if it didn't have the name ECW attached to it. I think that, I think that really, you could have called it, I don't know, PCW, whatever, but you could have had something that maybe was a bit silly, maybe it was a bit more kid-friendly. I can't remember when the ECW brand came back. I know it was somewhere in the late to mid-2000s. But around that time, WWE was kind of transitioning from the PG era into the adult. They weren't sure what you're doing. You absolutely could have had another brand that kind of tried to balance, balance that a little bit more to see what people would actually lap up and have these silly characters. And also, it kind of probably could have worked as the NXT works now. Like, they pushed Bobby Lashley through that. They pushed CM Punk through that. There's probably somebody else I'm forgetting that, I wouldn't say they got their break there, but they were at least given an opportunity they wouldn't have got elsewhere. And they did move people across. I remember Kurt Angle was in ECW for a while. So
I think you're right. I think, to be honest, I think the current NXT product is closer in terms of vibe to ECW than the reignited ECW brand ever was. I love NXT. NXT is my favorite brand on WWE at the moment by far. But I think that, again, that's in terms of work rate, the in-ring performances. Absolutely loving NXT. I think the workers on that are the best across all of WWE, with some maybe a couple of exceptions. But yeah, closer to ECW feel than the ECW branded WWE ever was.
With that in mind, then, what do you think about these recent call-ups? Moving on to Raw and SmackDown this week. I mean, if you haven't seen it, basically what we've seen so far on Raw and SmackDown is EC3 smiling at a microphone and then posing in front of a mirror. Lacey Evans having a chat and then watching TV at a weird angle. Nikki Cross having a pretty good debut, having a pretty good match, but then on SmackDown sort of being trapped in some weird cage fencing and just shaking it and shouting. And obviously Heavy Machinery, Otis, Djokovic, however you pronounce his second name, I always get confused with it, was both treated as a crazy lech man and somebody that wanted to drink weird protein shakes. I mean, that's he was basically treated as someone that had zero IQ, which, I mean, I feel like they've ruined that tag team already. But as somebody who obviously is well into NXT, considers the best WWE brand, obviously, had these guys being pushed for a while, and now we get here, and apparently, always rumor and speculation, but the rumor and speculation is that Vince McMahon has done this so they have a presence on WWE TV, and as soon as they're ready to do something with them, people won't be like, oh, who's that guy? Now, I think that's a backwards way to do it, but, it's not my company. So, yeah, I mean, I'm sure you've seen a lot of what these guys have done down in developmental. How do you feel that, someone like EC3 is now basically a budget Lex Luger?
Yeah, that's exactly what it is, isn't it? I confess I haven't seen this week's Raw or SmackDown, but your descriptions were quite good for me to...
Well, I mean, that's literally it. I mean, the EC3 one, he was, on SmackDown, he was actually just stood in front of a mirror flexing as I think it was Samoa Joe walked by. He was just in the background. He wasn't even the focus. He was just there. It was weird.
Well, that's a shame. I think that EC3 is quite a promising talent. He's really, really well in Impact, and he's done quite well in NXT as well. I don't think call-ups are necessarily a good idea for anyone. I can't remember the last time I saw a call-up that resulted in the wrestler being pushed appropriately or effectively. So I don't know. I always feel quite conflicted whenever a wrestler is called up, because I know that's their ultimate goal, is to be brought into Raw or SmackDown. But at the same time, I'm very apprehensive about what they're going to be able to do. So with these particular call-ups, I don't know. We'll see. Is that's the best we can do.
I think that's fair. Like, as we talked about it a lot on both these and What Culture videos, it takes mere weeks to build somebody back up, because we all have short attention spans nowadays, because that is the way that entertainment is presented to us. So if all of a sudden EC3 goes on to win the US title, IC title, world title, whatever, yeah, the rumor is that EC3 is going to face Dean Ambrose at WrestleMania. Let's say they have a really good build, a really good feud, and then Dean Ambrose loses to EC3 at WrestleMania. That's going to be a great introduction, and we're probably not going to be sat here talking about the time that he flexed in front of a mirror for some reason on SmackDown. But I just don't get it, because I thought the whole point of NXT was to build up personalities and to build up stock with these wrestlers that you can then introduce to the Raw and SmackDown audiences. That doesn't mean they have to watch NXT. It just means you've got stories and you've got, tent poles that you can then use to copy and paste across, be that vignettes or promos or whatever, and yet we've never done that. The only person I can actually remember, and I'm sure there will be somebody else, I mean, Sami Zayn was almost there, but in terms of one I felt like was a proper transition, was Kevin Owens. He came up with the NXT title, people explained he was a prize fighter, they told everything that he'd done down in developmental. I was like, okay, that all makes sense. And I felt like people knew who he was because of it. Yeah. And then yet, moving on from that, which was a success, I believe, I can't think of a time when we've done it since. Like, people like The Revival came in, they beat the New Day one, but then one got injured, and that was it for them. Enzo and Cass are a story onto themselves. I mean, who saw all that stuff coming? Absolutely crazy. And you take some newer one like Sanity. Sanity got that mini push after the big change came in WWE, and we haven't seen them since. Which makes absolute... Yeah, where are they? Exactly. So where are they? So I just can't figure out why there isn't a set plan for everybody. It worked with Kevin Owens, and yet we won't go back to that well to do it with anybody else. I don't get it.
Well, no, I mean, Kevin Owens is a good example, but also I think he's a very special talent. He's got something that maybe a lot are missing. He's one of my favourite in the current roster. So maybe you have to be absolutely exceptional in order to excel. But I don't know if that goes all the way to explain why we've seen so many who did particularly well in NXT then kind of fall on their face as soon as they get to WWE. So I don't know what the solution is. If I did, I'd be a multimillionaire. But
well, I think surely the first thing we should do is actually write 6 months. I mean, they're never going to do this, but write sort of long-term storylines for these people for when they come in. So I don't mind if EC3's story is, he's going to do this in front of the mirror because, I know it sounds ridiculous, but on next week's episode of SmackDown, he's going to smash somebody with that mirror. I mean, that's bollocks. But you know what I mean? If it ties in, and I can actually go, okay, at least there is something developing here, that I am going to like it more than just, he's in front of a mirror for some reason. But that's what I don't... Yeah, that's what I don't believe they are doing that. And again, the rumor mill is just that Vince McMahon thought, well, it's better to get them on TV than not to get them on TV. So it's like, that's crazy.
There has to be some meat on the bone. It can't just be something for something's sake. You can't just have, like you say, you can't just have him flexing in front. What does that tell us about him? It doesn't tell us anything. Maybe that he's a bit vain. Great. That's been done a billion times already.
No.
Do something new. You're right. They need something to propel them. They need some momentum. We've already got the momentum from their shows in NXT. I don't see why they can't use that for inertia. I don't see why they have to be something completely new. I mean, I accept that the NXT audience is a small subset of the overall WWE audience, but why can't we show the WWE audience what happened in NXT? Why can't we?
I know. Yeah, it's true.
History? Why can't we show the fantastic matches that they've been in? Why can't they just be a continuation of their existing characters that we know have succeeded?
I don't know the answer, but it's exactly that, right? It's exactly that. They should, use the weeks, months, maybe potentially even years of footage and story that you've got. That's why I don't get. Why aren't we using that? Surely that's 100% what we should be doing. But hey, I don't understand. Now, you haven't seen Raw or SmackDown. I'm going to look this up as I talk. Do you know about we'll call it sexualization spots? Have you heard about these?
No, I haven't. Please tell me.
Right, okay. I just want people's opinions. I've got a video going up on What Culture, probably today, and I'll probably talk about it more in the actual sort of weekly Wednesday podcast that I'm doing on a Friday. Of course I am. But basically, and again, collaborated, I should say, by Dave Meltzer on the Wrestling Observer via his sources. There was an episode on Raw. A skit on Raw where Alexa Bliss, what's going on? Alexa Bliss was caught with her top off, basically. An intern or a stagehand came, he knocked on the door, nobody answered, he had a coffee for Alexa Bliss, and when she didn't answer, he just walked in, and again, he caught her with her top off. She was covering up with a t-shirt, but it was a bit like, oh, well, that reminds me of stuff that we used to see and we haven't seen in a long time. I'm the first person to always say, if everybody involved in these skits wants to do it, it's not for me to comment. However, from an entertainment point of view, it's just not stuff I need to see on my wrestling in 2019. Just my opinion. Doesn't mean I'm right. Doesn't mean I'm wrong. Then on SmackDown, we had the continuation of the Jimmy Uso Mandy Rose and Naomi storyline, where essentially Mandy Rose tricked Jimmy Uso to going into a hotel room to take pictures of him in an incriminating position and eventually stripped down to some lingerie. Now, the reason I wanted to ask your opinion on this is simply because I'm looking right now, the Alexa Bliss segment with obviously a thumbnail that you can imagine has done almost 6 million views, and the Mandy Rose one has done almost 3 million views. Just to give you an idea about other stuff that happened, the Fatal 4-Way from Raw has done 1.5 million views, and nothing else really comes close. Now, again, it's all about what was agreed upon beforehand. If everybody involved gave it the green light and they want to do it, it's not for me to comment on. I'm allowed a preference from somebody sitting in front of their TV, but that's about as far as it goes. But, again, this is me speculating here and kind of playing devil's advocate, to be fair, as well. But knowing what I know and interviews that I've seen with Alexa Bliss and Mandy Rose, they've certainly, expressed an interest in being professional wrestlers and training as professional wrestlers. And obviously Alexa Bliss was doing pretty well in that regard before she got concussed. So my thing is always, are we taking a step backwards here? And also, not only that, but, if you do want to go down the sexualization route, I think there has to be parity between men and women. Really, that's just what I personally think. If you're going to show TNA, as it used to be called, maybe you should do it both ways. Just my personal opinion. I don't know. But I'd like to get, as a man who obviously lived through the Attitude Era, and you know exactly what I'm talking about, obviously nowhere near what we were doing then. Let's not pretend otherwise. It wasn't offensive, and it was done as tasteful as you can imagine. It wasn't tasteful. You know what I'm saying? I'm just intrigued what you see. I understand why they're doing it. I just read out the viewing figures. People want to watch this stuff. But I don't believe it's the problem. I don't believe it's the solution long term.
Well, I think it's a big question. But for me personally, I think it is regressive, and I don't necessarily think it's positive for the business. Now, you've told me about the page, the video views on YouTube, which signifies that those particular segments are popular, which makes it difficult for me to argue against it. But at the same time, do those views translate into regular viewers?
Yes, that's my thing. Yeah, exactly.
Because it's pretty much cheap heat, isn't it? Really, that it's a cheap thing to do. It's easy for them to get. But do you think that's what Alexa Bliss and Mandy Rose signed up for when they joined? Do you think that's what they look forward to when they joined the WWE roster, or do you think that they probably wanted to do something a little bit different?
I think that's the real question here, and I do think you do have to mention the women's evolution too, because obviously pushing we're going to treat our ladies as athletes and they're not doing so. It creates its own questions. But yeah, to me the big thing is all about what people want to do, and I don't think you should ever you should never stop that. It's not my right, and it's not or anything to do with me if Alexa Bliss and Mandy Rose want to do that. But it just seems funny. Funny is the right word. It just seems intriguing to me that clearly we've made a big push to get away from this, and then all of a sudden when we need ratings, it's come back. Do you know what I mean? That's when all of a sudden you're like, well, I get it. I really, really do. I get it. But yeah, two things for me. Like you've already said, I don't believe it helps long term, and also I think you kind of need to, plant your flag in the sand here. You know, which way are we going? What direction are we going in? What exactly is the idea here? And I'm sure it will help with the teenage audience. Again, 5 million or 6 million, whatever it was, views for that clip of Alexa Bliss. But I can only talk about it from my own kind of perspective. And again, all is fair when everybody gives the thumbs up. But I just don't want to. Yeah, it's just not what I want to see when I tune into wrestling. And I saw somebody make the point, well, this is with the SmackDown one with Naomi. Well, this is a situation that you would see in real life, so it should be represented, in wrestling. I don't agree with that at all.
No,
There's so many. That's like saying we should get murder investigations into wrestling. I don't want that. Maybe I watch wrestling differently to most people, but I just want to be entertained. I just want to have fun. And I guess in many ways, and as I add numbers to my age as the years go by, I kind of almost I want to have a childlike sensibility to it. I want it to be silly and over the top and fun, because that's the reason I believe I've watched it for so long, is that it does create a fantasy world. I don't necessarily want quote unquote real situations being pulled into it.
No, I agree with you. It's just because something happened in real life is absolutely no reason to have it reflected in any way on the WWE product. I watch it for the same reason as you. I expect it's relief from real life. I enjoy it for its entertainment value and nothing else. I don't read into anything more than that. We don't have to have things on there just because they're happening in real life at all.
No, I don't think so. But I think it's interesting, and I think it's a debate that's that's gonna go on. And again, each their own. If you like it, I'm certainly not saying that you're wrong. I am saying that's just my personal opinion.
I don't think there's any place for it necessarily within wrestling, and I won't condemn it. I won't go far as to say that, but I won't enjoy it.
Yeah, see, I don't enjoy it either. That's exactly it. I don't enjoy it. I just don't. And also, I genuinely think that in 2019, if you're going to do that, you should offer something for everyone. So stick Finn Balor in a thong or something. I don't know. Make sure that you're addressing.
I don't have it at all, but yeah, if you're going to do it, exactly like.
Yeah, address everyone. Address all people. I thought that's what 2019 is all about. Let's address everyone. Anyway, That's neither here nor there. Right, the Royal Rumble's coming up as well. I wanted to touch upon that. Everyone keeps... actually, the real thing we should talk about, obviously, is that Braun Strowman was taken out of the Royal Rumble main event. Finn Balor has been inserted into it. I think you could be quite cynical with this, and I wouldn't sort of... disapprove too much of anyone saying it, but it does kind of look like someone being like, well, we can't have Braun lose, but we don't mind Finn losing. However, it has resulted in Finn Balor getting a pretty big push over the last couple of weeks. What do you think about that? Are you happy about Braun Strowman not being a main event? Would you rather see Finn Balor? And also, really, what's your opinion on Finn Balor kind of overall? Because you get some people that absolutely love him, but then there is a contingent of people that will also say, actually, I think he's kind of found his place where he is.
No, I think he's probably underutilized, to be honest. I am a fan of Finn Balor. I'm excited about the prospect of him being in the main event, although having said that, I'm pretty sure he has no chance of winning whatsoever. I think we're more likely to see a match along the lines that we saw when Brock fought Daniel Bryan or AJ Styles, and I really, really did enjoy those matches. They were probably some of my favourite Brock matches of all time, and I'm a huge Brock Lesnar mark. So I am very much looking forward to that. And I hope that it leads to something else with Finn Balor as well. I think that, like I say, he has been underutilized. I think that WWE would benefit from pushing him more, having him have a more prominent spot. So yeah, that's my thought on that. I have Braun. I liked Braun when he first came in. I thought he had a lot of potential. I don't know what "get these hands" is supposed to mean, but I like him, but I'm not over enamored with him. So for him to be taken out of the Royal Rumble doesn't hurt me so much, and it is. I think Finn Balor is an interesting replacement.
I agree with you. I don't see how he wins. So I think what it comes down to now is how do we get through this to where we don't just kill Finn Balor completely? Because
anyone who you'd be able to put in that spot at this point and be able to have them be a realistic opponent for Brock. I think that just the situation that WWE's put itself in now with regards to Brock and the way he's been building up Braun, previously Roman Reigns, I think that they did that possibly at the expense of other talent, and maybe they cornered themselves a little bit, pushed themselves into a corner, and that has caused this difficulty. I don't know what the answer is, but I think the potential is there for Finn Balor to excel in this match, and especially if Brock is happy to sell for him the same way he was happy to sell for Daniel Bryan at Survivor Series, which is potentially unlikely as well. But if that happens, I think we could see then Finn be pushed the way he always probably should have been, and that for me is more exciting than just this being a one-off match.
Yeah, I think that's the thing for me, is that you mentioned the Daniel Bryan thing and the AJ Styles thing. That's what we need to do. That's what we need to do with Finn Balor here. We need to make sure he gets through this match basically unscathed, and even though he loses, he can come out looking like a badass, because then there's loads you can do with him. The other question is really, in terms of if you want to bring kayfabe into it, and he's got a big match, he should really try and, he should really use the demon persona, if you think about it. But I doubt that he will, which makes no... It's kind of hard, right? Because you want him to use the demon persona, because the demon persona is cool. But then again, if he comes out in the demon persona and loses, you're like, well, that was a waste of time. However, we haven't seen it since, SummerSlam? So that kind of starts begging the question, because it's just going to be confusing for some people if every now and then he just randomly comes out, with this demon stuff. So, yeah, I don't know...
I disagree with you slightly on that, Simon. I think that the demon persona would probably not be a great idea for this particular match. If they were to have a longer run, if there was 2 or 3 matches with Brock Lesnar, then perhaps the last match he could bring out the demon persona, and that would make more sense to me. But I think just bringing it out because it's Brock Lesnar, it'd be counterproductive.
Do you think whoever Finn Balor has at Mania, you build to the demon coming back then? Is that a better way to do it?
I don't know if it's just about the context of the show. I think it has to be the context of the feud. If that makes sense.
Yeah, who does he even fight? Sorry, I just kind of start to think, who does he even fight at WrestleMania? Like, what is even in the cards? Because let's say that he does hit a brick wall with Brock Lesnar. Okay, get it, we understand, but that's the end of that one. Where does he go? Because, Seth Rollins arguably he's going to be the guy tied up with Lesnar. Let's say that Dean Ambrose EC3 rumours are true, so that's gone. Bobby Lashley, maybe? I don't really necessarily want to see a Bobby Lashley versus Finn Balor feud, but I don't know if Finn Balor goes after that. That's why I think it's doubly important that he makes sure that, he does have a good match and is able to walk away with his head held high, because, if not, we've seen what can happen with Finn Balor, and I'd rather that didn't happen again, because he's finally got some momentum.
Yeah, I don't know, if I was booking, in my imaginary world, I might even consider having Brock win against Finn, but with the potential involvement of another wrestler who would then feud with Finn leading up to WrestleMania, and then I think that would be quite exciting to see. Obviously Brock probably doesn't need any help, and he probably wouldn't appreciate any help in the kayfabe sense. But it would be really exciting to see, I think, a very, very even match at Royal Rumble between Finn and Brock, only for Finn to be scuppered at the last moment, and then that would then lead on to a feud with that wrestler. Now, who that is, good question. Maybe one of the call-ups, but I don't know.
I'd like to see it. I'm excited about it as well. I think, especially because there's murmurings out there that Brock Lesnar actually requested this and said, "Look, I want to fight Finn Balor." And usually, when Brock's into something, as you kind of touched upon earlier, Brock is brilliant. I really like Brock Lesnar. When Brock Lesnar wants to go to work, there's few people as good as Brock Lesnar. He's a one of a kind athlete, as they always say, but it's true. So yeah, I'm intrigued to see where we go with this. What about the Rumble itself? Obviously, on next week's episode of the podcast, we will talk about the Rumble more in depth as we lead up to it. But as I've got you here now, Toby, who do you want to win? I know Seth Rollins is the obvious one, but maybe you kind of have an under the radar pick. You tell me. If you get to book, I give you the reins to WWE. I have that power. Who do you want to win the Royal Rumble? And also from there, what do they do when they get to WrestleMania? Because in modern day, that means nothing winning the Royal Rumble. Does not mean you're going to main event WrestleMania at all.
No, absolutely. Now, I think that I fully expect Seth Rollins to win. I think that the second most likely is Drew McIntyre. I don't want to see either of those two win. I think Seth Rollins is probably not as good as a lot of people think he is, at least in my eyes.
Dude, what have you done?
So,
what have you done?
I'm going to get some awful comments on YouTube.
Tell me why. Let's start there. Why not?
I mean, I like him. Don't get me wrong. I think he's great. I just think he's a little bit overexposed. I haven't really been especially excited about any of his feuds, especially with Dean Ambrose. I think Dean Ambrose I don't think he's anywhere near as good as Seth Rollins, to be honest. I think he's by far overexposed. I think he's got a great work rate. He's got a great. He's great on the mic. I just don't think he's got the it factor that I like to see, and we all like to see in WWE.
Fair enough, man. Fair enough. I respect it. I respect your honesty.
But who would win? I would like to win the Rumble? That is a very good question. Do you know what? If Lars Sullivan even had been called up, if he was in the Rumble, I would have kind of probably liked to see him win as a complete sort of outside bet. You know, it would have been a fantastic introduction to him. I think he's got a great look. I think he's a very good worker as well. And as a new guy to come into the Rumble that no one knows, but for him to win it, I think that would be probably the best push that any call up could hope to have. That would have been nice, but I understand that he's not going to be around for whatever reason. So in terms of people who are going to be in it, I don't know. You might have to remind me of some wrestlers who are in it.
Oh, dude! I mean, let me get it up. Let me see if I can find. If I go to Royal Rumble 2019, I bet I can get a list, and we can figure out, because obviously it got changed after Raw. So the competitors at the moment are R-Truth, Drew McIntyre, Big E, Kofi Kingston, Xavier Woods, Seth Rollins, Jeff Hardy, Dean Ambrose, Bobby Lashley, Samoa Joe, John Cena, Elias, Baron Corbin, Jinder Mahal, Apollo Crews, Andrade, Mustafa Ali, and Rey Mysterio. So that is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. So we still have 12 people that can be in it. So maybe the winner isn't even there.
Yeah, absolutely. I think of the wrestlers that you mentioned, if I was booking, probably Samoa Joe, or perhaps...
Damn right.
yeah, it's fantastic, isn't it? Maybe has Andrade Cien Almas been repackaged as simply Andrade now?
Apparently, loads of people lost their mind about that. Like, man, as long as he's being used well, I don't care. Like, call him whatever you want, call him Ding Dong, for all I care. Like, as long as he's being pushed and he's not just finished, he's not just vanishing from Raw, that's all good. It's all good. Like, just do what you want. I don't mind.
I think he's got potential. I think he's
great. Yeah, he's really good.
He had a wonderful career before coming over to NXT. Was incredibly popular in CMLL, as I understand. But I think Samoa Joe would pip it for me of the wrestlers you mentioned.
Oh man, I mean, it's never going to happen. But do you know how much I would love that?
If I was able to, yeah.
Dude, you're talking my language, my friend. I would absolutely love that. That would be the best. It'd be the absolute best. But yeah, it's unlikely. But you never know. You never know with the Royal Rumble. I do want to, as we just we wrap this up, I do want to talk about Lars Sullivan quickly, because I can't remember if we talked about it or not. Obviously, the rumor that he wasn't able to turn up for his debut was because he suffered an anxiety attack. And, as a man that likes to talk about mental health on my own personal channel, if you've never been, you can just find my vlog series on my YouTube channel, The Miller Report Rules. It certainly sounds like WWE handled this very well, and I think we're all quick to jump down their throats. So credit to them if that is the case whatsoever. Like, nobody plans to have a panic attack. I know I saw a few people going, "Oh, he's in for the push of his life. What an idiot!" Yeah, well, brains are funny things, and sometimes you can't control them. So
yeah, that's not how it works, is it?
No, it's not. Like, you can have. I mean, I always go back to sort of famous people, or Chris Cornell. He had a tribute concert for him last night, I believe. He had everything. He had the world on a platter. He was a famous musician with a wife and family, kids, money, and something. He couldn't balance something out in his brain either, and devastatingly, he took his own life. So you know, if Lars Sullivan, I mean, fair play to Lars Sullivan as well, because it takes, I sound a bit cheesy, but it's true. I think it takes proper courage to be able to go, sugar, this is not right for me, and walk away. So I hope he comes back. I hope he finds what he needs to come back. Yeah, but I don't think we've talked about it on here before. So as it came up, I wanted to mention it. And yeah, hopefully it doesn't affect his push. Hopefully he can just walk back in and do whatever it is that he was meant to do. Because, you know, it is 2019. We should all be a bit more understanding about this stuff. So yeah, it humanizes him. He's a human being. Doesn't matter if he's 6'4" and a monster. Yeah, well, that's not how this stuff works. So
yeah, and like exactly the same as you, I'd like to see him be able to get past his issues, get better, and come in and show us what he's capable of.
Exactly, get better. That is the best way to put it. I like that. Yeah, get better. Health is more important, and you know you've got the experience down in NXT. You've got the look. I don't think that should change anything. So yeah. Okay, cool, dude. Is there anything you want to pimp out before we bring this bad boy to a close?
No, nothing for me. I'm on Twitter if anyone wants to follow me. I'm Toby1Jabroni.
Well, that's the best Twitter we've had so far, so there we go. You win that game.
But that's all I've got. So if anyone wants to follow me, by all means.
Toby1Jabroni. Absolutely brilliant. Well, that's I love that. That's made my day. Yeah, excellent, dude. Well, thank you so much for your time. Like I say, if you're around sort of in a month or so, or 6 weeks, whenever we can get you back on, definitely stay in touch and we'll do that. And maybe I'd like to do an episode on ECW. I've thought now. I will think about this and I will send you a message. I think there's more we could have talked to about that because ECW is such an interesting creation all around.
It is.
And the fact you got in at the right time, you understand the context. Probably more than I will, 100% more than I do. I was a retroactive ECW fan. So, yeah, we'll absolutely have to get back on. Hopefully there'll be some kind of occasion we can, we can look at it and go from there. But yes, look, thank you very much for joining me, my friend. Again, if you're listening to this on Saturday, please do go back 24 hours and make sure you hear the first episode this week. I know it's all crazy this week, but hey, what are you going to do? Such is life. I'm on Twitter and Instagram at SimonMiller316. All this is also on my YouTube channel, youtube.com/The Miller Report Rules. Patreon.com/SimonMiller316 is the place to go to support all of this. And Toby, thank you so much again for your time, man. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
It has been, dude. I really enjoyed it. That was a real nice, serious conversation about pro wrestling, and that's what this is all about. That's why I started doing it. I love it. But dude, you take care of yourself. We'll talk to you again soon. Thank you, everyone, for listening, and yeah, I'll chat to you next week.